we're going to go ahead and start the recording. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Chelsea Cohen. I am the CEO and co-founder of Overstock, and I'm going to be talking to you today about how to increase your profitability with inventory optimization. And I'm going to be talking a bit about fees. Amazon's been very fee happy in this past let's say 6 months or so. So we're going to talk about some of those fees, the fees that are obvious, and then some of the fees that are rather not obvious. There are people who gotten really focused on inventory over the past 2 years with restock limits and all of the problems with supply chain and the port, but things are starting to ease up a little bit, and I'm going to be talking about a little bit of a warning in terms of not easing up too much on your inventory because of all these fees that are coming up. And we obviously know that stocking out is one of the worst things that can happen to your business, but the silent killer, as I like to call it, the silent killer is holding costs and all of the costs associated with your inventory after you get your inventory into stock. And Amazon is making these holding costs a lot worse, especially with some of these slow sellers, the excess inventory, the overstock that you have. So we're going to talk about those, about what you can do to maybe mitigate some of those costs, and then also what you can do from an inventory minded marketing perspective. That means, inventory and marketing working together to be able to, again, mitigate these fees. And so putting that system in place is something we're going to be diving into. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, hopefully you guys can all see my screen. Let me know if you are having any problems with any of that. But again, we're going to talk about increasing profitability with inventory optimization. And the reason that I like this subject is that it's ultimately the reason that I started Overstock to begin with was to recover my profit. Profit was dwindling, looked at what was happening in inventory and stocking out and doing air shipments all the time was a big part of why the profit in my business was starting to diminish. So let's talk about that. Little bit about me, for those of you, again, who don't know me. I've been selling on Amazon since 2014 and immersed in Amazon inventory. It's been actually 4 years now. Spoken to hundreds of 6, 7, and 8-figure sellers specifically about inventory. Also spoken to lots of aggregators and written a ton of articles. Been on dozens of podcasts. We now have over 1,000 software users in Overstock and are recommended and used by top masterminds, influencers, agencies, and aggregators. So let's go ahead and talk first and foremost about the numbers. It's very important as the first rule in inventory to get the numbers right. Right? If you don't have the numbers right, you don't have anything. And one number being off can tend to throw everything off. So there is this thought that if we have the numbers from Amazon, we're doing well, right? The numbers are going to tell us exactly what we have to do. Well, there are instances when the numbers can be looked at incorrectly. And if they're looked at incorrectly, you get into problems of over ordering and of under ordering, or even ordering too late. So let's talk about how to look at the numbers correctly. There's something that I call true velocity. And another term that we use for true velocity is daily adjusted velocity. And by adjusted velocity, what we mean is that you're not just looking at like your total sales. You're actually looking at your total sales with respect to patterns that are going to repeat themselves. So if you had, for instance, a stock out, you don't want to plan to have a stock out again. So you have to compensate for that stock out. If you had a sales spike that is not going to repeat itself, let's say Prime Day, you're looking at your last 90 days of sales and there's Prime Day right there, a huge sales spike, but you don't have Prime Day coming up in the next couple of months for placing your next order. You want to remove that sales spike. Deep discounts would be another one. If you're not planning on doing a lot of deep discounts, the surge would also be considered potentially a sales spike. And then lastly, looking at optionally last year's sales. So you need to apply those same guidelines of factoring stockouts and sales spikes out of your last year's sales if they're not going to repeat themselves. And then, so once you've got your daily adjusted velocity, of course, growth trends can be layered on top of that. Seasonality and marketing events can be layered on top of that. But this is really your foundation. And it's very, very important to understand your business from that perspective, right? To know what your numbers are, to know what your daily adjusted velocity is, and then everything will be built from there. To kind of illustrate this point, I wanted to talk about a case study that came up for a 7-figure Amazon seller in the wholesale space. And this was a seller who I spoke to. He had been using another software for many years, and the software was not accurate enough. So he created his own spreadsheet, and he had these dual systems. He had the software to run some of his less popular products, and then he had the spreadsheet for his best sellers that were really generating 80% of the income in his business. And he would use these two systems, but he was still stocking out regardless of which system he was using. So he thought, give SoStock a try, and put his data in, and was kind of surprised at how high the velocity was being predicted for him compared to his spreadsheet and compared to the software. And so when we dug into the data, we actually figured out why it was that he was stocking out, and how you can have the same data coming from Amazon and yet get so many different answers. And it had a lot to do with the stock out calculation. So here's an example of what exactly was happening. So the software that he was using said he was selling 8 units a day. His custom spreadsheet plugged in the data, it was saying 10 units a day. SoStock looked at the same data and was able to find that it was actually selling 15 units a day. That was the true velocity. So there's a big difference between those two. So he was placing weekly orders, and of course he was stocking out in both of these instances because he was under ordering. So the reasoning behind how this could be, how is it possible that you have the same data and then 3 different systems are getting 3 different answers? So first and foremost, the question to ask is, did you have stock, right? If you didn't have stock, using FBA, you're not going to be able to sell. Of course, in other systems you could pre-sell, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, Amazon FBA, and did you have stock? And if you didn't, then obviously you're not going to have made sales. This is something, whether you have stock or not, that can be pulled directly from the Amazon historical API. So when SoStock, you're able to pull 2 years worth of data, and we can look back and see that you did or did not have stock at Amazon on that day. If you do not have API pulls, or you don't use SoStock or another system that does this for you, you can use a stock out log. And that's something that you can, we have a DIY spreadsheet that you can download at sostock.com/tools. There is a DIY inventory spreadsheet, and it includes a stock out log. And that's basically to track what are those days that you stocked out, and how can we remove those from our calculation. Then you have the second point, which is, was there an unusual interruption in your normal sales velocity? This is a point that a lot of people miss out on. These things could include things like the day before you go out of stock, you have that lower sales day, or the day you come back in stock, you have the lower sales day. And Amazon finding a unit or 2 during a stock out, right? When you have zeros and all of a sudden you have 1 sale, Amazon found something, dusted it off on the back shelf, and went and sold it during your stock out when you didn't close your listing, for example. Another sales interruption would be a listing suspension. So you have stock sitting at FBA, but your listing was suspended, so you're not selling. So that should be treated in the same way that a stock out would be treated. So these are all points that can throw off your data and points that a lot of these formulas are not taking into account. So let's look at how this actually works. This is what was happening inside of the system. So this is what it would look like. You've got the competing software and you've got what SoStock does. Basically, you've got these two different calculations. Generally, the calculation is just looking at that one thing. Did you have stock? And they're not looking at this other factor, this second factor. So here's where the problem lies. If you've got a product selling 100 units a day, when it goes out of stock, it has that lower sales day. Let's say 23 sales versus 100. Generally, a lot of systems will count that as an in-stock day. And then you see stock out, 2 stock out days. Then you see that one sale that Amazon made, that is often counted as an in-stock day because you had a sale and you had stock. Then you have stock out days, and then you come back in stock the end of the day and you sell 13 units. Now, we count all of those as stock out days because the numbers are so low, they're skewed so low that it's going to throw off all of your data. It's going to throw off the average. When you look at a 30-day average, if you're looking at a 30-day average to calculate your next 30-day order, for example, the problem is that you have 23 in-stock days versus 26 in-stock days. And so when you do that calculation, it ends up with the average sales velocity, the adjusted velocity being 90 units a day versus 100 units a day. Your true velocity is 100 units a day, but because the calculation is counting those extra days incorrectly, it throws everything off. And so when you're placing, a 2-month order, a 3-month order, that's hundreds of units that you are going to be short of, and you could potentially stock out or have to do an expensive air shipment. So this is the foundation. This is what you need to understand when you're assessing how to run your system, whether you run it on a spreadsheet or you run it in a software. This is an important calculation to know. And similarly, sales spikes should be treated the same way. All right. Now I want to talk about a system that should be being adopted by sellers, right? This is the number one mistake sellers make. And that in itself is marketing inside of a vacuum. This is going to become more important when you start to understand. We're going to start unpacking a little bit of the conversation around fees, right? We're going to talk about that, and then you're going to start to kind of connect the dots as to why this is so important. So marketing inside of a vacuum, when margins are tighter, it's very important to control your inventory and to control your holding costs. And the more inventory you hold, the more expensive it gets, and the narrower your margins are. Similarly, when you stock out, it costs you a lot of money in various different ways. So a concept that I have been pushing a lot is something I call inventory-minded marketing. And that's coordinating your marketing and your inventory team, having them work together to avoid stock outs and overstock. So there are a couple of different reports that will be used, and I want to go ahead and talk about all of them. First and foremost, you have the marketing plan. The marketing plan is something that the marketing team should be giving to the inventory team. This is something that even 8-figure sellers have had problems with in the past. I've had an 8-figure seller who did a sale. They did a promotion for Mother's Day, gave 20% off coupons, and sold a bunch of inventory. And then the next month by Father's Day, we're stocking out. So the reason that that gets really expensive is obviously you're losing revenue from stock outs. You may have to do expensive air shipments, and then the re-ranking costs, which we all are aware of. But there's also the 20% off coupon that you gave to your audience that could have been full price sales. So that becomes very, very expensive. So marketing plans need to be given to inventory. Inventory can vet those plans and make sure that that's something that can actually be weathered, right? Can you actually afford to do that marketing campaign? So let's talk about what this would look like. Again, this is something that you can download from sostock.com/tools. It's an inventory-minded marketing planner. This is something that your marketing team would fill out and give to your inventory team. So really quickly, it goes through the velocity calculation. So how do you, what data do you want to be looked at for your velocity calculation? Are you looking at last year's sales because it's a seasonal period? Are you looking at a velocity of 30 days, of 60 days, maybe of 90 days, or a combination? That data gets then sent to your inventory team so they know what data to analyze. Then you have trends that you can add. So this is the year-to-date trend, or you can also add growth trends. So if you're planning on doing a PPC campaign and growing your sales by 10%, you can add that into the additional sales growth section. Then you have lightning deals, or this could be other email campaigns, influencer campaigns. You pick essentially a date range, and then you put a total number of units that you think you're going to sell during that period. And that's going to be your sales projections for your sales events. And then you have the seasonal sales spikes. So the seasonal sales spikes is actually something that you're going to be putting in a date range, right? You're going to put in a date range. You're going to describe it. Maybe it's summer, and then the percentage increase that you think you'll have from that particular seasonal sales spike. All right, now I want to talk a bit about the inventory reports. So you've got a couple of different inventory reports that we're going to go through. One of them is obvious. It's the stock out risk report. Now, the stock out risk report is a report that is just what it sounds like, right? You want to look at, are there products that are going to stock out? How many days of stock out will possibly occur? When will they stock out? So if you have a product that is going to be stocked out for 8 days, and the marketing team sees this, maybe they had a marketing campaign that they were running that they could then ease up on, right? And avoid that stock out. If you're easing up on that, you have less sales that are being supplemented by your ad spend. And then each sale that you actually make in avoiding that, you're spending less money on ads. So they're actually going to be more profitable, and you could potentially avoid a stock out. If you can't avoid a stock out, right? A lot of people like to really drive the sales, drive that ranking up really high, and then close out their listing, right? So that's something that could be done. They would know what tactics should they take by looking at whether they could avoid a stock out or not. And if you don't have a system, SoStock allows you to create stock out reports. We actually have a stock out risk report set up. But if you don't have SoStock, or you don't have something that's calculating this for you, the calculation is total inventory divided by your daily adjusted velocity. And then that equals the total days of remaining stock to let you know how many days you have until you're going to stock out. Then you have the slow sellers report. So the slow sellers report is, I call it like the move it or lose it report. It's the report where you need to make a decision as to whether you're going to, this is going to be a good product for you or a bad product. It's one of those borderline things. It's not performing to your standards, but it's not completely failing. It's something that you think you could still recover. And so you want to pick a range. You select a minimum and a maximum. So for our example, we'll say anything between 5 units a day and 20 units a day is going to be considered a slow seller. This report goes to your marketing team because your marketing team essentially wants to move it up above that 20 units a day and get it into a good range. right? If it's selling, over 20 units a day, it's a good product. So the items showing up on this list, they know that they need to market these pretty heavily. So that's what this report would be used for. If this is not viewed, right, if you're not really keeping an eye on these products, they could move into another category, and that other category is your liquidation report. These are the products that are real duds. They're not doing what they should be doing. They are, really floundering. They're dragging you down. So you don't plan on restocking them. This would be setting a minimum, right? Anything below 5 units a day, for me, I feel that is a dud product, a liquidation product. I need to get rid of it. The best case would be to sell through it, right? Maybe you drop your price, maybe you do an outlet deal or a lightning deal, something to drive sales to get rid of that inventory. That's going to help with your IPI score. If you have restock limit issues, it'll help with that, and it'll help you to recover some of that cash that you have tied up in that inventory. Lastly, we have the Overstock report. Products that are on these other reports could show up on the Overstock report, but your best sellers could show up here too. The thing to do to use this report, it's essentially an excess inventory report. It isolates your excess inventory, in this example, held at FBA. You're going to set a maximum days of supply. Right? If I have over 90 days of supply on this product, then I need to know about it. And I need to know that I have this product that I can use to, let's say, I need to move the inventory so I don't collect too many storage fees. I need to clear out that space. Maybe I have restock limit restrictions. I want to use it also to boost your ranking. So if you have a keyword that you want to rank for, and you see that you've got excess inventory, well, use some of that inventory to run a flash sale or to, do a coupon discount code or something targeting those specific keywords to really drive your ranking. Maybe it's a PPC campaign also. So that would be the use of the Overstock report for your marketing team. The other aspect would be if something is showing up on your Overstock report and is also showing up on your slow sellers report, that is a really good place to be, because you know that you need to boost your rankings on the slow seller to get it actually moving. And when it's on the Overstock report as well, you know that you have the excess inventory to be able to use to try to get that product out of the slow sellers report and into the other report, or into the viable category. All right, so that's the concept of inventory minded marketing. There are other reports that could be developed along this concept of inventory minded marketing. We are going to circle back and kind of touch on inventory minded marketing again regarding fees, but you can kind of start to see how Overstock reports and liquidation reports and slow sellers, those are all things that if we don't get on top of those, our holding costs are going to increase for us. And there's been a lot of fees that have been added. There's been a lot of fees that have been increased, and so it's more important than ever to make sure that you are on top of your inventory in this way. All right, I wanted to talk real quick about logistics flexibility. This is a practice that essentially gives you a lot of different alternatives. There've been a lot of cases where people have been backed into a corner when it comes to their supply chain. So this helps you to take more control over your supply chain. And we had someone on one of the webinars who had commented that they implemented this particular strategy and they had not stocked out since they started doing this. This is something that follows what I call the golden rule, which is never let anyone have all your stuff. That's generally the problem. When I talk to people who are dealing with stock out issues, oftentimes they're dealing with stock out issues because they let somebody have all of their stuff. So, for example, you know, in 2015, I sent all my stuff on, you know, in a truck to Amazon. Amazon lost it during Christmas and then found it after Christmas. Because I let Amazon have all my stuff, I ended up having a horrible Christmas that year. So that was where I started with this never let anyone have all your stuff idea. The way that you would build this out would be, if you're going to ship a container, right, ocean freight, you usually would order a container's worth of inventory from your supplier. Well, now the idea would be to order a container's worth plus, let's say, a month or maybe 2 months worth of inventory. So you place a larger order, you're going to pay that 30% down on that larger order. But then when you ship out the ocean container, now you have an extra month or 2 of inventory that your supplier will potentially be holding for you. Oftentimes they can hold this for free. So if they're holding this for free, you're not paying for that extra storage for that inventory. And then you've got your stuff on the ocean, you're hoping that it arrives on time. But if it doesn't arrive on time, you have the ability to take some of that inventory from your supplier and airship it over to avoid running out of stock. You only take on that air shipping expense if you absolutely need to, but you have that option because you have that inventory sitting there just in case, right? Also, there's a term that refers to just in case inventory. This would be an example of just in case inventory. Just in case versus just in time, which is what we've often been used to doing, is sending inventory in just in time. But so this is just in case inventory. You're not paying storage fees for that inventory. And then you can often negotiate with your supplier that final payment, 70% or whatever it is, that final payment, you only pay for what ships. So you pay that final 70% for the ocean freight, but until you ship that air shipment, or maybe you ship it, with the next ocean shipment, you don't pay for that 70% on that stock that's sitting at your suppliers. So that would be the system that you would develop, logistics flexibility. And then of course you have your 3PL and your FBA, and then you would move that concept over to your local transport. So you'd have your 3PL, you would send most of your inventory less than truckload or full truckload, and then you'd have inventory sitting at your 3PL so that you could send it small parcel delivery if you absolutely needed to. So if you've been one of these people who's had 4 months or 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks of your inventory at Amazon not checking in, having that extra inventory, that small parcel delivery inventory, you can ship over. And the benefit of small parcel delivery, it is more expensive, but it's more reliable. It is generally something that is done what is called live unload. Live unload is where they drive up to, they come in, they go to drop off the inventory, and they actually get to drop it off. They get to unload it into the warehouse. Whereas truckloads generally have to drop their trailer and then they leave, right? There are some truck services that will do live unload, something you can ask your 3PL about. Your 3PL should know if there's a provider, a carrier that will do a live unload. I believe Uber Freight is one of the companies that'll do live unload. So you might want to check out Uber Freight if you want to do less than truckload or full truckload, but have your stuff actually arrive and get unloaded directly into the warehouse without dropping the container for unloading later. Then, of course, I would recommend always having an FBM fulfillment backup, right? Even if Amazon's your only sales channel, it should not be your only distribution channel, meaning it should not be the only way you can get inventory to your customers. All right, so just a quick recap. You over order and store excess inventory at your suppliers, renegotiate your payment terms so that you're not paying your suppliers for inventory that's not shipped yet. Split your shipment to air freight if needed, and then apply the same concept to your 3PLs, less than truckload versus small parcel delivery. All right, we did have a quick question from Audrey. What's a good inventory ratio to have between Amazon versus 3PL versus boat versus production versus suppliers, warehouse, and how many units should you be carrying at each step? Yes, you can you can get into having just a ton of inventory, right? And it can end up tying up a lot of your cash flow. A good rule of thumb with Amazon is to have, say, 45 to 60 units of inventory, up to 90. 45 is probably the lowest that I would go, because Amazon can sometimes, they'll do something called geo ranking. And what geo ranking is this idea of, if you don't have enough inventory spread across the country, right, you will stop having your ads shown in certain areas, or you'll kind of come down on the ranking in certain areas. If Amazon doesn't feel confident that selling to a customer in the Midwest, they will be able to get that 2-day prime shipping because you don't have enough inventory there, they can start to lower your ranking. And you may not notice it because either you're not tracking that that closely, or you don't even see it because you see results for California or New York or wherever you are, and you don't see the search results in that particular area, and that's geo ranking. So having at least 45 days worth of inventory at Amazon is a good idea. Say 45 to 90, right, would be a good kind of a good rule of thumb. Not going below 45, but 90 to 2.5 to 3 months worth of inventory is a good idea for Amazon. Your 3PL, I would say 30 days worth of inventory would be a good way to go. And because if you have 30 days worth of inventory at your 3PL, you have that excess inventory at Amazon. And then boat versus production, you don't always have to have something on a boat, but whatever your orders are, let's say you order every 3 months or every 4 months, you put whatever it is to fill a container. If you're filling a container, for example, or just placing your normal order of whatever it is, 3 months worth of inventory, then just bump it up a little bit more to have some inventory that you can send via air if you need to. All right, hopefully that answers your question. And then of course, there's what we have in a perfect world, and then there's what you can afford cash flow wise, right? What you can afford cash flow wise, and then holding costs. Like I said, the supplier warehouse may not charge you holding costs. So that side of things may be a little bit easier for you to keep inventory there, because you don't have holding costs if they're not charging you storage. All right, that's a good question. Let's get into fees, and more importantly, how to reduce your fees. We have about 30 minutes left. I think this should be enough. There is a concept that I really like, which is little hinges move big doors. And that was the concept that SoStock was based off of. The idea that you can make little changes, and those little changes would be able to open up bigger opportunities. The obvious one for me starting out was inventory. If I could get control of my inventory, do better with inventory, those focal points would allow me to keep more of my money. If I could stop doing an air shipment, if I could stop having to do small parcel delivery so often, if I could get those things under control, then I would have retain a lot more profit. So that's the concept of little hinges move big doors. There's a lot more, that's just the scratching of the surface. There's a lot more that we're going to go into to be able to recover profit. And I call it profit optimization across the supply chain. And it's what aggregators are doing right now. And not a lot of sellers are doing it. Not a lot of sellers are focused on it. And it's really where a lot of your profit is hiding. So the opposite of little hinges move big doors is the pain point aspect. I call it death by paper cuts. And that was the concept that really drove me into SoStock. Death by paper cuts, this idea that all of these little tiny things that were costing me money, you know, having to airship and stocking out and, you know, fees increasing and people lowering their prices and all of those things was just death by paper cuts. I started out, my profit was here. And then, you know, as the years went by, it was a lot lower. And that was really something that bothered me. So, so death by paper cuts, something I think we all really feel, and little hinges is the solution. And a lot of it has to do with size. Size matters more than anything when it comes to shipping, right? Size and weight, but size even more than weight, especially recently. So we have things like unit packaging, you know, based on the size of our unit packaging, based on the size of our product, we're going to pay a certain amount of fees. And even more so with the new dimensional weight factor, which we'll get into. Carton packaging equals 3PL carton fees, labeling fees and handling fees, palletizing, storage fees and handling fees, containers equals shipping fees, right? All of these things that we can't control theoretically, but we actually can. There are actually things that we can do to control those. And I am going to go into what some of these things are and how big of a difference it can make in your business. And again, this is things that the aggregators are doing. I've spoken to aggregators who are doing this. They would get your business and they will make it more profitable immediately by doing things like this. So first and foremost is optimizing packaging. So each SKU that you have, it would be a good idea to look at it and see, can you reduce the size of it? If you're selling a face cream, is it possible to get it into a smaller container? If you've got a silicone product, could you fold it differently without compromising the integrity of the product? Could you vacuum seal something? What are the things that you could possibly do to reduce the size of that product? Reducing the size of the product is extremely important in the fees, the storage fees and the fulfillment fees that you have at Amazon. But it also has a ripple effect, and we're going to talk about the ripple effect that can occur just from the act of reducing those product sizes. The next thing would be the cartons and the pallets, the carton and pallet optimization. I have a tool for this. If you go to sostock.com/tools, you'll see the carton pallet calculator. And this is something that I discovered. A lot of sellers rely on their supplier to build out their cartons and don't really think about how those cartons are going to fit on pallets. And so we created a master carton calculator to help to optimize that particular arrangement. If you go by Amazon's guidelines, they allow for a carton to be 25 inches on any side. The problem with that is that, you think you want to max that out and say, okay, I want to fit enough in that, okay, great, I can get 5 across and that's 25 inches and that's perfect. And I can get as many units as possible into that particular box because it's 25 inches and that's within Amazon's guidelines. But then you go to put it on a pallet, and Amazon's guidelines also say you can't have any overhang. It has to fit on the pallet and it can't hang over. Pallets are generally standard pallet size 40 inches by 48 inches. So if you have two 25-inch boxes, that's 50 inches. It's going to overhang over that 48 inches. So you're setting yourself up to utilize a lot less space on that pallet. You can't stack a lot of those cartons on that pallet, which can be a problem. We've actually had people come into the calculator system who are using less than 50% of the total pallet space. If you reconfigure things, you can find that you maybe can reduce your pallets, your number of pallets by half. If you're using 50%, you could reduce it by half. Even if you reduced it by 30% less pallets means 30% less cost for your monthly storage fees at your 3PL. You're also, if you're getting palletizing, if you've got $15 per pallet to take it out of the container and palletize it, that's $15 for every single pallet. That's 30% reduction in palletizing costs. So all of these things start to add up. The best way to figure out the perfect carton dimensions and the perfect pallet dimensions is really to look at your unit dimensions and your pallet dimensions and do a bunch of math to work it backwards to figure out what is that ultimate perfect arrangement for my particular product. And like I said, there's a bunch of math involved. So we've actually created that tool for you, sostock.com/tools, to be able to test this out and to take a look at the possibility of changing up your configuration. When you type your fees in there and when you type your sales velocity and you put your order size, it'll actually give you the savings that you will be able to make, right? Looking at all of the fees, how much money will you be able to save? And we've had people saving hundreds, even thousands of dollars per order just by changing up their configuration. Then we have the container calculator. So if you've got your boxes, you want to make sure that if you have to pay $10,000 per container or whatever you're paying, you want to get as many units in that container as possible, because each unit becomes less, how do we say this? Every unit, the cost per shipping for every unit is going to be reduced the more units you can get into one container. So there is a tool at peer-to-peer.com/loadcalc. You can see that right there at the bottom, peer-to-peer.com/loadcalc. It's a free tool, and it will take your various different box sizes. So if you have 3 different box sizes, 4 different box sizes, it's going to calculate the optimal configuration to get as many boxes in there as possible to fill it out. And it's going to create a container map. That container map is going to be useful to people loading that particular container, but also send it to your 3PL. They'll be able to use it to unload the container more quickly. A friend of mine owns a 3PL, and he said that having those container maps can cut the unload time in half. So if you're paying $40 per hour for the unloading, you could reduce let's say each, you cut it down from 4 hours to 2 hours, or 3 hours, or 6 hours to 3 hours, reducing that cost. That's $120 for those 3 hours saved, right? So what I wanted to kind of look at is this optimization, right? Let's say that you can save a bunch of money on your carton optimization. You got carton optimization. Let's say you would save $82,000. The idea is that if you ever plan on exiting your business, this is where you start making a lot of money. So you can save money annually, you can invest that in other things, but then when you exit your business, this is money that is coming to you, right? Money going back into your pocket rather than money that is being saved by the aggregator. This is why aggregators are doing this. You'll kind of get an idea of how much money they're saving, not just on that they haven't had to pay you. There's a big chunk that they haven't had to pay you, but then they're turning around and making your business much more valuable. It's called instant equity. They reduce these costs by reconfiguring all this stuff, and they create instant equity for themselves. So let's say recartoning saves you $82,000. That's going to be $412,000 upon exit at a 5x multiple. Palletizing, let's say you cut down on $15,000 worth of palletizing fees. That's $75,000, and then air freight, $50,000. If you're getting your systems in, you're no longer having to do as much air freighting because your calculations are correct and you're not stocking out all the time. That's $250,000. stockouts. Let's say you saved $40,000 in stockouts, avoiding stockouts. It's another $200,000 because a lot of times they don't want to pay you for having stocked out, right? You might try that, but they might try to, you know, push back, and you might not get that added back to your valuation. So that's $187,000 that you would be increasing in terms of your profit. And that's almost $1 million that you're leaving on the table at a 5x multiple if you don't do these things. So if you are considering selling your business, it's just another reason to start putting these things in place before you get into looking at exiting. All right, I'm going to talk really quickly about the bombshell that hit us this year. That bombshell is the dimensional weight calculation. And the thing that I find very interesting about this is that we've all been aware of dimensional weight calculation as far as our FBA fulfillment fees, but it actually touches a couple of different places that can end up costing you money. And Amazon's doing some sneaky things whereby they're trying to force us or back us into not realizing that we're going to be paying some of these fees. It's pretty frustrating, but going back to reducing your packaging and reducing your fees in these other spaces can help to offset some of the things that Amazon is doing, right? Because we can't control everything that they're going to be billing us as, but we can start mitigating some of those losses across the supply chain, like we talked about. So if you're not aware of how dimensional weight works, dimensional weight is looking at two factors. The carriers have, you know, with this ground shipping, right? They have trucks, and these trucks have to take into consideration how much space they have in the back of their trailer. They have to take into consideration how much weight those trailers can hold. They have limitations on both sides of those things. So they need to do a calculation to figure out, based on how much weight and how much space your product takes up, how much should we charge you for the space you're using. And that is something referred to as shipping weight. The calculation goes like this. They look at the unit length times the unit width times the unit height, and then that gives you what's called, and then you divide that into what's called a dim divisor. Dim divisor is, in this case, 139. That's what Amazon's using. Most carriers like UPS and FedEx use that particular dim divisor. But that calculation is going to get you to the shipping weight. You have the actual unit weight, and then you have the shipping weight. Whatever is bigger is what Amazon is going to charge you. So let's do pillows. Pillows is a good example, and this is a real example from Amazon. Pillows is a good example because they're large, but they don't weigh very much. So here's an example from Amazon of a product that weighs 6 pounds. When you look at this product, 28 by 20 by 5, and then you divide it by the dim divisor, you get 20.14, which rounds up. Amazon always rounds up to 21 pounds. So there you're going to be charged as if this product was 21 pounds versus 6 pounds. It's a huge difference. I have a friend who sells pillows, and their fulfillment fees went up 94% overnight because of this change. So it can be very, very significant. Now, what if we were able to take the pillows and vacuum seal them and make them smaller? This is what is happening here. So we've got a small oversized product, and we've got a similar product, right? Both two-pack queen pillows that is shrunk down to fit large standard size. So the shipping weight for this one product was 3 pounds, and now with the dimensional weight is 12 pounds versus 6 pounds to 20 or 21 pounds. A huge difference there. So let's look at the fees. The fees are almost double just on the fulfillment fees alone, but then it trickles down. So because I can get my product smaller, I can put more in a container, in a carton, on a pallet. All of my fees are going to be reduced. So I'm paying almost double on every level, 67 versus $1.11, you know, $3.50 versus $6.50, almost all the way down the line. I'm paying much more. And this is something that's interesting. I have a friend who sells sunglasses, had a hard case for sunglasses, switched to one of those soft cloths, and was able to make these changes. The fulfillment fees went down, but then more units per carton, more units per container, per pallet, all of those fees were reduced. So it can make a huge impact. So start getting creative and thinking about those types of things. The difference between these two products, when you add up all of these fees, and we ran them through all of the calculators to make sure we had the optimum solution, the difference is $11.70 per unit. The difference, right? That's even without cost of goods and PPC and all of that. So it kind of goes to show you the massive impact that can be had. And this is probably not all people, and this is probably not your situation, but if you could even get a tenth of this, if you could even shave $1.70 off of each unit, if you could save, 50 cents per unit, that could make a significant difference, especially if you're selling high volume. Saving 20 to 25, 50 cents per unit could be a massive increase in your annual profitability. All right, I want to talk really, really quickly about the dimensional weight fees and what FBA fees are actually utilizing dimensional weight fees. So FBA fulfillment fees, we all know, they increased by an average of 21 cents per unit, but then they also added dimensional weight. Remote fulfillment fees increased by about 60%, and they're adding dimensional weight as well. Here is something that you need to know about. If you are not currently using remote fulfillment, right, and that's the NARF program, the North America Remote Fulfillment Program. What that is you have inventory in North America, you have inventory in the US, and then you have listings on Mexico and Canada websites, and then you're sending inventory to those different locations when inventory sells. You can turn this off, or you can opt in or you can opt out. Amazon, when they announced these remote fulfillment fees being increased, some sellers were saying that they were getting notifications that throughout the next several months, they're going to be automatically enrolling people into remote fulfillment. So if you're not part of this program, you need to opt out. So there's not an opt-in anymore. It used to be you opt into this. Now you have to opt out of it. So pay attention to that. If you haven't already opted out of the remote fulfillment, make sure you're not automatically enrolled within the next couple of months, because what will start happening is that you've got these huge fees, you've got dimensional weight stacked on top of that, and all of a sudden your profit starts leaking out because you're selling to Mexico and Canada when you don't really want to be doing that. So pay attention to that. That's a big one. Another really big one is the removal fees. Removal fees have increased about 50%, but they also now include dimensional weight. So if you've got a pillow product and you go to remove that product, they're going to be charging you based on if you had, 21 pounds shipping versus 6 pounds, right? Like in that example, your removal fees are much more expensive. And interestingly enough, Amazon has a liquidation program that is much, much cheaper. It's a flat rate, and it's maybe 50 cents. I'm not sure. I'd have to grab the numbers, but it's much, much cheaper than the removal fees. And so it's actually cost you less to liquidate a product than to remove it, which is actually kind of sneaky. It makes me wonder what Amazon's getting on the back end for those liquidations. So removal fees. So this is where those reports, those inventory minded marketing reports come in very handy, is when you've got all these removal fees, you've got all these storage fees, and we're going to talk a little bit about more storage fees. Storage fees have increased significantly as well, but they've added more storage fees on top. When you have all of these fees and you don't have a report that's going into your marketing team's face every single week saying, here's a product that's going to become a problem, right? Removal fees, you're either staring down high removal fees or you're staring down, $2.40 per cubic foot during the holiday season, right? There's a lot of expense involved. Lastly, when I talk about just kind of starting to add all of this up. So we have Amazon's fee stack, I like to call it. They have their FBA fulfillment fees with the dimensional weight, which is now extremely high. What Amazon is doing, so they have these restock limits, right? And they had this huge problem. They built a ton of infrastructure. They had their first quarterly loss reported this past April, since 2015, their first quarterly loss. And it wasn't a little loss. They lost $3.8 billion. $6 billion of that, $6 billion of the cost, right, was from excess capacity in fulfillment and transport. So they built this huge infrastructure during 2020, 2021, and now they can't fill it. Now, that's why you don't have restock limits so much anymore, because there's all of this excess capacity and now they have to pay for it. So how are they dealing with this? How are they dealing with shareholders being super frustrated at the $3.8 billion quarterly loss? They're turning around and they're doing dimensional weight fees. They're charging you more money. Dimensional weight fees. They introduced something called a fuel and inflation surtax. That's 5% on top of your fulfillment fees. So your fulfillment fees are, what they are, and then you add an additional 5% on top of that, which is the fuel and inflation surcharge. Then you have the removal fees, which we talked about with dimensional weight and the increase. Remote fulfillment fees, which we just talked about, and then they have something called the aged inventory fees. So there is a long-term storage fee at 1 year. In that 1 year, you're going to be paying a monthly fee of $6.90 per cubic foot every single month. Very significant. Long-term storage fees are extremely expensive, but now they have what's called an aged inventory fee, and that's at the 9-month mark. So now you have 9 months before you start taking on not just normal storage fees, but stack on top of the normal storage fees, the aged inventory fee. And that's $1.50 per cubic foot every single month from month 9 to month 12. And then you get into your huge long-term storage fees. So all that to say, Amazon's really kind of coming in hot and heavy. They're really wanting to make back some of the money that they're losing on fulfillment and transport and the entire network they've built out. So it becomes more and more important to adopt inventory-minded marketing, to do some of these profit recovery techniques of, reducing your packaging, getting your cartons and your pallets reduced using, master carton calculator, and then also that container calculator, all of these things that you can do to help to recover and regain that profit margin, and then avoiding things like your removal orders and aged inventory with the inventory-minded marketing, and then making sure that you're not being opted into remote fulfillment if you don't want to. All right, that's all I have. Opening it up for questions. If you guys have any questions, I know this was a lot. Hopefully it was of value to you. If you are new to SoStocked, don't know about SoStocked, just a little bit about us. We have, like I said, we're 1,000 happy customers. We do free data migration. We have one-on-one onboarding service that we offer as well. So you get to do a call with one of our onboarding specialists. And we offer a free discount. I don't know why that's a little bit weird. We offer a free discount. So if you go to SoStock.com, just go to SoStock.com and there is a little floater bar, and you can get a free discount or a free 30-day trial. All right, let me go ahead and stop sharing. We have a couple of questions here. Do you recommend opting out of NARF? It has to make financial sense for you. I mean, if you can make it work financially, just know your numbers. Go and look at what the remote fulfillment fees are. And if you price it high enough where it's profitable, then I would say, you know, it's a fine thing to do, but the numbers have to make sense. And then the other question is, do you also recommend we have unfulfillable inventory sent to dispose rather than return to address, as I'm assuming? Disposal is going to cost you the same as removing it. So if you feel like you can sell it on another channel and you know you don't want to dispose it, you're going to pay the same cost to dispose it. So unfulfillable inventory, I'm not sure if they, I would have to, I'm going to look into that. I would have to see if unfulfillable inventory is charged at the same removal rate or not. Return to address. Some people are able to see if they can sometimes recover that inventory. So it really depends on your system. But if you have a system to take that unfulfilled inventory and see if it's actually sellable, you might be able to sell it on another channel and recover some of that profit. That is something that you might want to do. But if you're not going to do that, then I would say definitely, you know, either way to get it returned. Because sometimes Amazon can end up reselling that or posting it on your on as a warehouse deal. Give me a second. We have one more question or two more questions. Sorry. So I'm just getting over an illness, so popping cough drops. Let's see. We've got Dwight asks, transitioning my business to be done by my VA. Do you do training for VAs? Yes, if you sign up, we'll train your VA, and we're actually putting together a certification course that hopefully will be launched in the next couple of weeks. But either way, we can train your VAs if you sign up for SoStocked and deal directly with your VA. They can get on the onboarding calls, and then we have great follow-up support as well. So we'll have we also have complete SOPs. So we have like a 65-page SOP for, you know, various different scenarios of sending inventory, you know, sending reports to your marketing team, sending purchase orders for approvals. All of those things are built out into SOPs, and then those SOPs are connected to a template, a ClickUp template that you can then utilize if you use ClickUp. Does it work well for online arbitrage, wholesale, and branded bundles? So we do have bundling features. You'll have to see if the bundling features are something that you can utilize, because there are a couple of updates we want to do to bundling, but we do have a lot of people who use the bundling features. And then we have for online arbitrage, some people use it for kind of like a purchase list. And so it would be utilized that way. You'd be setting it up a specific way for that. Some people have, you know, we aren't built for arbitrage, but some people have used it for that. And then wholesale, yes, we work with a lot of wholesale sellers as well. So you can go ahead, and we've got a demo call. If you go to sostocked.com/book-demo, and I'll put that in here, the link in here. But if you go there, let's see, book demo, you can sign up for a demo, and then you can see how this works for you. Find out if that's gonna suit your needs. Ask any questions that you might have. Yeah. And then Caleb asks, SoStock seems like maybe geared more towards private label sellers. Do you recommend it for sellers who are following the wholesale model? Yeah. So again, SoStocked is for wholesale and private label as well. You know, there's two different problems. Private label, there's a lot having to do with lead times and, you know, the long time it takes to get inventory, but then wholesale has huge problems with, you know, just the massive amount of SKUs, like you mentioned, right? Large amounts of SKUs. And we have a lot of filtering processes. We have a lot of bulk actions and bulk uploads as well. So we do have a lot of wholesale sellers that use SoStocked for that reason. All right. Dwight also says, is it necessary to import data from other software? It's not necessary. It is, you need the Amazon API. And so you would need to plug in your API. Everything else can be uploaded. If you need help, if you have data in another software, it can be helpful for us to take that data. We have a migration, free migration assistance. So if you have data that you want imported from somewhere else, you can work with our team. They can let you know what data is needed in what format, and you send it along, and we can have someone do a lot of the manual data entry work for you so that you can save time in terms of the importing of the data. So hopefully that answers that question. And then Audrey asks, does it have a way to create POs and integrate with QuickBooks? So it can create POs. We don't integrate with QuickBooks yet, but we are planning to get to that point. So we have POs, and then you can export those POs as well. So, yeah, so a PO system, and then also a work order system, so that when you place your transfer orders from your 3PL, you can have you can send something to your 3PL for transferring it also. All righty, I think that's it. I'm gonna share the link to SoStocked. We have just straight on the link. We have a demo, so you can scroll down and see the demo. And then we also have links, a button at the top that says try for free. So you can try it for free. And, you know, we got a 30-day free trial. So if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. And there's a contact us button on our website. If you are interested in connecting with me, you can actually reach out to me as well at sostock.com/connect. I'll drop that quickly in the chat. My socials are there, a lot of different things, the demo, upcoming webinars, free tools. And if you find me on Facebook and LinkedIn are my best channels to find me there. Shoot me a little message if you're gonna send a friend request. That way I know who you are. You know, I'm sure you're on Facebook, get a lot of, you know, friend requests from various different people. So I'd love to know who you are, and hopefully we can connect. All right. Thanks, guys. See you later.